Maybe if you lost some weight, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere. The words cut through the silence of their shared apartment, like shattered glass hitting concrete. Emma Rodriguez froze in the doorway of their bedroom, her heart hammering against her ribs, as she watched her boyfriend of 3 years casually button his shirt, a shirt that still carried the perfume of another woman. At 12 years old and 230 pounds, Emma had heard whispers and seen the looks her entire adult life, but hearing it from Jake Morrison, the man who had sworn he loved her unconditionally, felt like drowning in ice water. The shopping bags filled with his favorite snacks slipped from her trembling fingers, scattering across the hardwood floor like the pieces of her shattered heart. Jake, please tell me you didn't just say what I think you said. Emma's voice barely rose above a whisper, but the apartment's thin walls seemed to amplify every syllable. She had rushed home early from her job at the accounting firm, excited to surprise him with homemade lasagna and the imported beer he loved. Instead, she had walked into her worst nightmare wrapped in cruel honesty. Jake turned around slowly, his perfectly sculpted jawline, the one she had traced with her fingers countless times, now set in cold indifference. At 30 he was everything society deemed attractive, 6'2", lean muscle definition that came from religious gym attendance, and the kind of effortless confidence that opened doors and dropped panties. What Emma had once seen as magnetic charisma, she now recognized as calculated cruelty. Emma, come on, we both know this relationship hasn't been working for months. He sat on the edge of their bed, tying his expensive Nike sneakers with the practiced ease of someone who had done this dance before. I mean, look at yourself. Really look. When's the last time you fit into anything that wasn't from the plus-size section? The mirror across from their bed reflected Emma's image back at her like an unwelcome truth. Her curves, which she had spent years learning to love, despite society's messages, suddenly felt like evidence in a case she was destined to lose. The floral dress she had chosen that morning, thinking it made her look professional and pretty, now seemed like a tent draped over her failure. I cook for you every night, Emma said, her voice gaining strength from somewhere deep inside her chest. I work 50 hours a week to help pay for this apartment. I listen to you complain about your boss, your parents, your everything. I've supported your dreams, your moods, and I'm grateful for all of that, Jake interrupted, standing up and checking his reflection in the mirror above their dresser. He ran his fingers through his dark hair, the same gesture that used to make Emma's stomach flutter with desire. But gratitude is an attraction, Em, and I can't force myself to be attracted to someone who's given up on taking care of herself. The cruelty of it hit Emma like a physical blow. Given up on taking care of herself. She thought about the hours she spent researching healthy recipes, the walks she took during lunch breaks, the yoga videos she attempted in their living room while he played video games. She thought about the supplements she bought, the diet plans she tried, the way she monitored every bite while he demolished entire bags of chips without consequence. So you decided to take care of yourself with Madison from your gym. Emma's voice cracked on the name. Madison, with her Instagram perfect abs and her protein shake lifestyle. Madison, who posted daily workout videos in sports bras that cost more than Emma's monthly grocery budget. Madison, who Jake had mentioned casually in conversation for months, always followed by "she's just a friend" or "she's helping me with my form." Jake's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a tell Emma had learned to recognize after 3 years of reading his moods. How did you never mind? Yes, Madison and I connected. We have things in common, fitness goals, healthy lifestyles, ambition. Each word was chosen like a surgical instrument, designed to cut precisely where it would hurt most. Ambition. Emma laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. It echoed through their apartment like breaking glass. I have a CPA certification and a corner office. Madison sells protein powder on social media and calls herself an entrepreneur. Financial success isn't the only kind of ambition. Jake picked up his gym bag, the expensive leather one Emma had bought him for his birthday, and slung it over his shoulder. Some of us have goals that extend beyond accepting mediocrity and making excuses. The words hung in the air between them like poison gas. Emma felt something fundamental shift inside her chest, like tectonic plates rearranging themselves before an earthquake. For 3 years she had absorbed his casual criticisms, his helpful suggestions, his loving concerns about her health. She had internalized his disappointment and made it her own shame. But standing there in their bedroom, watching him prepare to leave for another rendezvous with his fitness model mistress, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in years: white-hot, purifying rage. Get out. The words came from somewhere primal, somewhere that had been buried under years of self-doubt and people-pleasing. Get your cheating, lying, pathetic excuse for a man body out of my apartment. Jake's eyebrows shot up in surprise. In 3 years, Emma had never raised her voice, never issued ultimatums, never stood her ground when he pushed back. She had been the perfect accommodating girlfriend, bending herself into whatever shape he needed while he remained rigid and demanding. Your apartment. Jake laughed, but Emma could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. I pay half the rent, Emma. My name is on the lease. You can't just watch me. Emma walked to their shared closet, and began pulling his clothes off hangers with systematic precision. Expensive shirts, designer jeans, the suit she had helped him pick out for job interviews, everything landed in a growing pile on the floor. You want to be with someone who shares your values. Congratulations, you're free to pursue your shallow image-obsessed, protein shake for breakfast lifestyle with whoever will have you. Emma, you're being dramatic. We can work this out like adults. Jake reached for her arm, but she stepped away so quickly he nearly lost his balance. The physical rejection seemed to shock him more than her words. Adults. Emma continued throwing his belongings onto the pile. Adults don't fuck their gym buddies while their girlfriend is at work paying for their protein supplement. Adults don't systematically destroy someone's self-esteem and then blame them for the destruction. She found the box of photos, hidden in the back of his side of the closet, printed pictures of him and Madison at various gym events. Vacation photos from trips Emma had never been invited on, intimate shots that made her stomach turn, the evidence of a double life she had been too trusting to investigate. How long? Emma asked, holding up a photo dated 6 months earlier. How long have you been making me feel crazy for suspecting what was right in front of my face? Jake's mask finally slipped completely. The charming smile disappeared, replaced by the cold calculation Emma was only now learning to recognize. Since February. But Emma, you have to understand, February. Emma calculated backwards in her mind. February was when she had started her most recent diet attempt. February was when she had joined the gym near their apartment and tried to work out 3 times a week. February was when she had started cooking healthier meals and suggesting active date ideas. February was when she had been trying harder than ever to become the woman she thought he wanted. You started cheating on me the exact month I started trying to lose weight for you. The realization hit her like a physical blow. When I was at my most vulnerable, when I was actually making changes, you decided I wasn't worth the effort of waiting for results. Jake's silence was answer, and Emma felt the last pieces of her romantic illusions crumble into dust. This wasn't about her weight, her appearance or her lifestyle choices. This was about power, control, and a fundamental lack of respect for her as a human being. You know what the saddest part is? Emma stopped throwing clothes and looked directly at Jake for the first time since the conversation began. I actually believed you when you said you loved me. I thought love meant accepting someone completely, supporting their growth, being patient with their struggles. I thought we were a team. She walked to their dresser and pulled out the small velvet box she had hidden behind her jewelry case. Inside was a watch she had been saving to give him for their 3-year anniversary next month. A Rolex Submariner that had cost her 4 months of careful budgeting and overtime work. I was going to give you this next month to celebrate our anniversary, Emma said, holding up the box. I wanted to show you how much I appreciated your patience while I worked on myself, how grateful I was that you saw something valuable in me that was worth waiting for. Jake's eyes widened as he recognized the distinctive Rolex box. Emma had spent weeks researching the exact model he had mentioned wanting, had worked extra clients to afford it, had imagined the joy on his face when she surprised him with, Emma, that's incredibly generous. But you threw it all away for someone with a better squat form and a flatter stomach. Emma closed the box with a decisive snap. This watch costs more than Madison makes in 3 months selling her detox teas. But I bought it because I thought you were worth the investment. I thought we were building something together. She walked to the window and opened it, holding the box outside. One last question. In all your conversations with Madison about your ambitious fitness goals, did you ever mention that your pathetic, mediocre girlfriend was planning to spend her Christmas bonus on your dream watch? Emma, don't do anything crazy. Jake started forward, but Emma's expression stopped him cold. Crazy? Emma smiled for the first time since coming home, but it was the kind of smile that made smart people nervous. Crazy would be letting you continue to gaslight me into thinking I'm the problem. Crazy would be begging you to stay and work on our relationship. Crazy would be accepting your explanation that this is somehow my fault. She pulled the box back inside and set it carefully on the windowsill. But I'm not crazy, Jake. I'm angry. And there's a difference. Emma walked to her laptop and opened her banking app. With a few keystrokes, she transferred half of their shared savings account money that was legally hers into her personal checking account. Then she opened their shared credit card account and removed Jake as an authorized user. What are you doing? Jake demanded, trying to look over her shoulder at the screen. Taking back control of my financial future, Emma replied calmly. You see, while you were busy working on your fitness goals with Madison, I was busy getting promoted to senior account manager. My salary just increased by 40%, effective next month, which means I can afford this apartment on my own. Jake's face went pale. Emma could see him calculating the implications. His part-time personal trainer income couldn't cover half of their expensive downtown rent, and his parents had made it clear they wouldn't support his lifestyle choices anymore. You can't just kick me out, Jake said, but his voice lacked conviction. I have rights. We have a relationship. We can work through this. Rights. Emma turned to face him fully, like the right to respect, the right to fidelity, the right to be loved for who I am rather than who someone thinks I should become. Those rights. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a contact she hadn't called in months. "Hi Sarah, it's Emma. Remember how you said your brother was looking for a roommate? Is that one bedroom in his building still available?" Jake watched in growing panic as Emma arranged temporary housing for him with efficient precision. The same organizational skills that made her excellent at her job were now being deployed to extract him from her life with minimal disruption to her own plans. "Emma, please, can we just talk about this like rational people? I made a mistake, but we can fix this. I can end things with Madison. We can go to counseling. We can work on us." Jake's voice took on the pleading tone he usually reserved for asking favors. "Rational people," Emma repeated, continuing to pack his belongings into garbage bags with systematic efficiency. "Rational people don't cheat and then blame their partner's appearance for their own moral failures. Rational people don't gaslight their girlfriends into thinking they're paranoid when they're actually being betrayed." She found his collection of fitness magazines and supplement receipts, evidence of the thousands of dollars he had spent on his body while criticizing hers. The irony wasn't lost on her that his gym membership cost more per month than her grocery budget. "Besides," Emma continued, "what exactly would we work on? Your commitment issues, your shallow value system, your complete inability to see me as anything more than a reflection of your own insecurities." Jake sat heavily on the bed, his usual confidence cracking like cheap paint. "Emma, I know I fucked up, but you have to understand the pressure I'm under. My career depends on image. The clients at the gym expect their trainers to look a certain way, to have partners who reflect the lifestyle." "Stop," Emma's voice cut through his excuses like a blade. "Just, do you hear yourself right now? You're actually trying to justify cheating on me because your job requires you to have a trophy girlfriend." She laughed, but it was the sound of something breaking permanently. "You know what, Jake? You're absolutely right. You do need a partner who reflects your lifestyle. Someone shallow enough to think protein powder is personality. Someone insecure enough to need constant validation through Instagram likes. Someone empty enough to mistake physical attraction for emotional connection." Emma zipped up the last garbage bag and set it by the door with the others. 3 years of shared life reduced to 5 bags of belongings and a pile of broken promises. "Madison is perfect for you," Emma continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "She'll never challenge you to grow as a person. She'll never expect emotional depth or intellectual conversation. She'll never ask you to love anything about her that can't be improved with a gym membership and good lighting." Jake stood up slowly, seeming to finally understand that this wasn't a negotiation. Emma wasn't making empty threats or trying to manipulate him into better behavior. She was done. Completely, permanently, irrevocably done. "What about us?" Jake asked weakly. "What about everything we built together?" Emma looked around their apartment, the space they had decorated together, the kitchen where she had cooked countless meals, while he criticized her portions, the living room where they had watched movies with his running commentary about actresses' bodies. "What we built," Emma repeated. "Jake, I built this relationship. I paid for it, maintained it, invested in it, and sacrificed for it. You just lived in it like a parasite, taking what you needed while contributing the bare minimum to keep me from leaving." She walked to the front door and opened it, holding it wide like an invitation to freedom. "But now I'm done building a life around someone who sees me as a fixer-upper project rather than a finished masterpiece." Jake gathered his bags with the defeated movements of someone who had finally run out of manipulation tactics. At the threshold he turned back one more time. "Emma, I really did love you. That part was real." Emma met his eyes steadily. "No, Jake, you loved the idea of me. You loved having someone who worshipped you despite your flaws. You loved the security of unconditional acceptance while you shopped around for something better. But you never loved me, the real me, with my body, my dreams, my complexity, my worth." "You'll regret this," Jake said, his tone shifting to something darker. "Good luck finding someone else who'll put up with what?" Emma's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "My successful career, my financial stability, my loyalty, my capacity for genuine love, my cooking skills, my emotional intelligence." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Jake, I'm not the one who's going to have trouble finding someone better. I'm the one who just realized I deserve better than settling for someone like you." The door closed with a soft click, leaving Emma alone in the sudden silence of her reclaimed space. For the first time in 3 years, the apartment felt like it belonged entirely to her. She walked to the window and picked up the Rolex box, turning it over in her hand. Instead of throwing it away or returning it, Emma made a different decision. She would keep it, not as a reminder of Jake, but as a symbol of her own worth, proof that she had been willing to invest deeply in someone she loved, and evidence that she deserved someone willing to make the same investment in her. That night, Emma ordered Thai food from her favorite restaurant. The spicy dishes Jake had always complained were too intense for his palate. She opened a bottle of wine she had been saving for a special occasion, and sat in there, her living room, finally understanding that the special occasion was her liberation. As she ate pad thai and sipped wine, Emma began making a list. Not a diet plan or a fitness routine,
or a self-improvement scheme, a list of everything she wanted to accomplish now that she was no longer spending her emotional energy managing someone else's insecurities and maintaining their comfort at the expense of her own growth. Learn Italian, take that photography class, travel to New Zealand, write the novel she had started 3 times, apply for that promotion to regional manager, buy a house, learn to salsa dance, start the blog about financial literacy she had been planning for years. The list grew longer as the wine warmed her blood and the silence expanded her possibilities. For the first time since college, Emma felt the intoxicating rush of unlimited potential. She was 28 years old, financially stable, professionally successful, and completely free to become whoever she wanted to be. But even as she planned her newly independent future, Emma felt something else stirring beneath the surface, not just anger at Jake's betrayal, but a deeper fury at the years she had spent believing his narrative about her worth, the years she had wasted trying to shrink herself to fit his limited vision of acceptable femininity. Tomorrow, she decided, would be the beginning of a different kind of transformation, not the kind designed to win back a cheating boyfriend or meet society's beauty standards, but the kind that would prove to herself just how much power she had been giving away to people who had never deserved it. Emma raised her wineglass in a toast to her empty apartment. Here's to finding out what happens when you stop accepting other people's limitations as your reality, she said aloud, her voice echoing off the walls that now belonged entirely to her. She had no idea that this moment, this precise instant of choosing herself over the comfort of a familiar disappointment, would set in motion a chain of events that would not only transform her life but eventually force Jake Morrison to confront the devastating reality of what he had thrown away in pursuit of something as shallow and temporary as Instagram-worthy arm candy. But that reckoning was still months away. Tonight was just about Emma, wine, pad thai, and then the intoxicating possibility of becoming the woman she had never allowed herself to imagine she could be.
6 months after Jake Morrison walked out of her life with his garbage bags and wounded ego, Emma Rodriguez stood in the flagship store of Nordstrom, studying herself in the 3-way mirror that would have once been her worst enemy. The woman looking back at her was someone she barely recognized, not because her body had changed, though it had, but because her entire presence radiated a confidence she had never possessed before. At 25 pounds, Emma had lost nearly 100 pounds through a combination of therapy, nutritional counseling, and a fitness routine that prioritized strength over appearance. But the most dramatic transformation wasn't visible in any before and after photo. It was the way she carried herself, the way she met her own gaze in mirrors, the way she took up space in the world without apologizing for her existence. "The Armani fits you perfectly," said the sales associate, a woman named Claire who had treated Emma with genuine respect from the moment she walked into the designer section. "That cut is incredibly flattering with your figure." Emma smoothed the lines of the black blazer, appreciating how the Italian tailoring emphasized her newly defined waist while accommodating her still generous curves. At $1,200, it cost more than she used to spend on clothes in 6 months. But Emma's perspective on money had shifted along with everything else. She no longer bought things to hide her body or apologize for taking up space. She invested in pieces that celebrated the woman she had become. "I'll take it," Emma decided, adding the blazer to her growing collection. Tomorrow was the launch party for her financial consulting firm, Rodriguez Financial Strategies, and she intended to look like the successful entrepreneur she had spent months becoming. The journey from heartbroken accountant to business owner had been anything but smooth. After Jake left, Emma had thrown herself into work with the focused intensity of someone who finally understood that she was her own best investment. The promotion to senior account manager had been just the beginning. Within 3 months, she had identified inefficiencies in her company's client management system and proposed solutions that saved them over $200,000 annually. Her boss, Richard Chen, had been so impressed that he offered her a partnership track. Instead, Emma had thanked him for the opportunity and given her 2 weeks' notice. "You're crazy to leave a secure job in this economy," her mother had warned during one of their weekly phone calls. "What if this business thing doesn't work out? What if you Emma had smiled at the questions that would have paralyzed her a year earlier. "Mom, what if I succeed? What if I build something amazing? What if I discover I'm capable of more than I ever imagined?" The conversation had ended with her mother's reluctant blessing and a promise to attend the launch party. Emma suspected that Maria Rodriguez was more proud than worried, but expressing pride in a daughter's ambition didn't come naturally to a woman who had spent her life encouraging Emma to be grateful for whatever scraps of affection came her way. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from her business partner and best friend, Sarah Kim. "Jake's at CrossFit downtown asking about you. Again. Marcus says he's been coming in 3 times a week for a month, always asking if you still train there." Emma felt a familiar flutter of satisfaction. Jake had been making increasingly desperate attempts to reconnect ever since Emma's business had been featured in Entrepreneur magazine 2 months earlier. The article, titled "From Heartbreak to Success: How One Woman Turned Betrayal into a $1 Million Business," had included professional photos that showcased Emma's transformation without making it the focus of her achievement. The calls had started subtle, Wrong numbers that lasted just long enough for him to hear her voice, texts sent to her old number that he claimed were accidents. Then came the social media stalking, the mutual friends deployed as reconnaissance agents, the sudden appearances at places he knew she frequented. He looks desperate, Sarah had reported after running into Jake at their old neighborhood coffee shop, like legitimately unhinged. He tried to pump me for information about your dating life, your business, whether you ever talk about him. It was actually kind of pathetic. Emma had felt a mix of vindication and pity. The Jake Morrison she had known was many things: selfish, shallow, manipulative, but never pathetic. That he had been reduced to stalking her through mutual acquaintances suggested a level of regret she hadn't anticipated. But Emma had more pressing concerns than her ex-boyfriend's belated recognition of her worth. Tomorrow's launch party would introduce Rodriguez's financial strategies to Denver's business community, and she had spent weeks ensuring every detail reflected the professionalism and competence she had built her reputation on. The venue was the rooftop of the Grand Hyatt, with panoramic views of the Rocky Mountains and space for 150 guests. The invitation list included potential clients, business partners, industry colleagues, and financial journalists from 3 states. Emma had even invited some of her former co-workers from the accounting firm, wanting to show them what was possible when ambition met opportunity. Emma, the voice cut through the Nordstrom bustle like a knife through silk. Emma turned to see Madison Fletcher approaching with the kind of confident stride that came from years of turning heads in every room she entered. Even now at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, Madison looked like she was heading to a photo shoot, perfectly applied makeup, strategically distressed athleisure wear, and the kind of casual perfection that required extensive effort to achieve. Madison, Emma replied evenly, her voice betraying none of the complicated emotions swirling in her chest. This was their first face-to-face encounter since the breakup, though Emma had followed Madison's social media enough to know that her relationship with Jake had ended spectacularly, 3 months earlier. Wow, you look... Madison's eyes traveled over Emma's transformed figure with the kind of assessment that used to make Emma want to disappear. Now it felt like watching a child try to solve calculus, irritating, but ultimately harmless. Different. Successful, Emma corrected gently. The word you're looking for is successful. Madison's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Right. I heard about your business thing. That's so brave of you, taking such a big risk. The words were carefully chosen to sound supportive while carrying undertones of skepticism. Emma's laugh was genuine and warm. Madison, the biggest risk I ever took was trusting my self-worth to people who were fundamentally incapable of recognizing value when they saw it. Everything since then has been calculated strategic moves based on thorough market research and realistic financial projections. She gestured to the armful of designer clothes she was purchasing. This isn't retail therapy or emotional spending. This is an investment in the professional image of a company that's already profitable in month 6. But I appreciate your concern. Madison's composure cracked slightly. Emma could see her struggling to process this version of the woman she had dismissed as weak competition. The Emma she remembered had been apologetic, self-deprecating, grateful for scraps of male attention. This Emma spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who had discovered her own power and learned to wield it effectively. Actually, Madison said, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone, I was hoping to run into you. Jake has been, well, he's been having a hard time since we broke up. He talks about you constantly. I think he's realized he made a huge mistake. Emma felt a surge of second-hand embarrassment for both of them. Madison, I need you to understand something. Jake Morrison is not my problem anymore. He's not my responsibility, my concern, or my business. What he's realized or failed to realize about our relationship is irrelevant to my life. But he really loves you, Madison pressed, seemingly unable to accept that Emma might not care about Jake's emotional state. He says you were the best thing that ever happened to him. He wants to make amends. Emma studied Madison's face, seeing something she hadn't expected: genuine confusion. Madison lived in a world where male validation was the ultimate currency, where being chosen by a man, any man, was considered the highest achievement. Emma's indifference to Jake's renewed interest genuinely bewildered her. Madison, Emma said gently, I want you to consider the possibility that being loved by Jake Morrison isn't actually the prize you think it is. He's a 30-year-old man who defines his worth through his ability to attract women he considers trophies. He discarded me when I didn't fit his image requirements, and discarded you when something better came along. That's not love, that's collecting. Madison's face flushed with something between anger and recognition. That's not, he didn't discard me. We just wanted different things. What did you want? Emma asked with genuine curiosity. The question seemed to catch Madison off guard. She opened and closed her mouth several times before answering. I wanted someone who appreciated my dedication to fitness, someone who shared my lifestyle value. And what did he want? Madison's silence was answer enough. Emma could see the realization dawning in her eyes, that Jake had never been interested in Madison as a complete person, only as a reflection of his own image and desire. Madison, Emma said softly, you deserve better than being someone's accessory. You deserve to be loved for your mind, your ambitions,
Your complexity, your flaws, your growth, all of it. Not just for how you look in his Instagram photo. For a moment, Madison's carefully constructed facade cracked completely. Emma glimpsed something vulnerable and uncertain underneath all the perfectly curated confidence. But then the moment passed, and Madison's protective mask snapped back into place. "Well," Madison said with forced brightness, "I should let you get back to your shopping. Good luck with your business." As Madison walked away, Emma felt an unexpected wave of compassion. She recognized something of her former self in Madison's defensive posture. The way she had once structured her entire identity around being worthy of male approval, never considering that the approval itself might be worthless. Emma's phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from her therapist, Dr. Angela Martinez. "Remember, you can only control your own actions and reactions. Other people's drama is not your responsibility to solve." Martinez had been instrumental in Emma's transformation, helping her understand the difference between self-improvement motivated by self-love versus self-improvement motivated by shame and external approval. The distinction had changed everything about how Emma approached her goal. "The weight you lost was never the most important change," Dr. Martinez had explained during one of their sessions. "The weight you gained, in self-respect, boundaries, and authentic confidence, that's what actually transformed your life." Emma finished her shopping and headed home to her new condo, a sleek two-bedroom space in Lodo, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the mountains. She had bought it 6 weeks earlier, paying cash from the profits of her first major consulting contract with a regional bank. The contrast with her old apartment was striking, where her shared space with Jake had been cluttered with his belongings and compromised by his preferences. Emma's new home reflected her taste entirely. Clean lines, warm colors, carefully chosen art, and a home office that served as the headquarters for Rodriguez Financial Strategies. As Emma prepared for the next day's launch party, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The months after Jake's departure had been difficult in ways she hadn't anticipated. Losing 95 pounds had been the easy part. Emma had approached it with the same systematic efficiency she brought to everything else, working with nutritionists and trainers who understood that sustainable change required addressing mental patterns as well as physical habits. The harder work had been unlearning the stories she had told herself about her worth, her desirability, and her place in the world. She had spent years believing that her size made her less deserving of love, respect, and professional success. Breaking those mental patterns had required more discipline than any diet. Emma's phone rang, interrupting her reflections. The caller ID showed her business partner Sarah's name. "Are you sitting down?" Sarah asked without preamble. "Should I be?" "Jake just called the office. He wants to hire us." Emma set down the dress she had been steaming and sank into her desk chair. "He what?" "I'm serious. He called asking about our small business consulting services. Says he wants to discuss expanding his personal training business into a full-service fitness center. He specifically requested to work with you." Emma laughed, a rich, delighted sound that echoed through her condo. "Sarah, please tell me you're recording this conversation, because this is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." "I told him our consultation fee is $500 per hour, with a minimum 5-hour initial assessment," Sarah continued. "He didn't even flinch." "Emma, I think he's serious about this business thing, but I also think he's using it as an excuse to get close to you." Emma considered the implications. Jake Morrison, the man who had dismissed her ambitions and criticized her lifestyle, was now seeking her professional expertise. The man who had cheated on her for being too fat was now trying to hire the successful businesswoman she had become. "What did you tell him?" Emma asked. "That I'd need to check with my partner and get back to him." "Emma, what do you want to do?" This could be incredibly awkward, but it could also be incredibly satisfying. Emma walked to her home office and opened her calendar. Tomorrow's launch party was booked solid, but she had a free afternoon next week. An idea began forming in her mind. Not revenge, exactly, but something more elegant. A demonstration of exactly how much power dynamics had shifted. Schedule the consultation, Emma decided. Friday at 2. Our regular rates. Our standard contract. Completely professional. If Jake Morrison wants to hire Rodriguez Financial Strategies, he's going to get the full business experience. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked. "I don't want this to mess with your head, or derail your progress." Emma looked around her beautiful condo, thought about her successful business, considered the launch party that would introduce her to Denver's business elite. She had built a life she was genuinely proud of, surrounded herself with people who valued her mind and her capabilities, and learned to define her worth through her own achievements rather than other people's approval. "Sarah," Emma said with quiet confidence, "Jake Morrison couldn't derail my progress now if he tried, but he might learn something about the cost of underestimating people." The next evening, the rooftop of the Grand Hyatt buzzed with conversation and the subtle energy of successful people networking. Emma moved through the crowd in her Armani blazer and a matching pencil skirt, accepting congratulations and discussing potential partnerships with the fluid confidence of someone completely in her element. Emma Rodriguez, a distinguished man in his 50s, approached with an extended hand. David Chen, Denver Business Journal. I've been following your company's growth. Could I steal a few minutes for an interview? As Emma discussed her business philosophy and growth plans with the journalist, she noticed a familiar figure hovering near the elevator bank. Jake Morrison, dressed in an ill-fitting sport coat that made his normally impressive physique look awkward and uncertain. He was clearly trying to work up the courage to approach her. Emma excused herself from the interview and made her way toward Jake, her heels clicking confidently on the polished floor. She wanted to control this interaction, to demonstrate that she was approaching him from a position of strength, rather than being cornered by his desperation. Jake, she said pleasantly, extending her hand for a professional handshake. I understand you're interested in our consulting services. Up close, Jake looked terrible. The confident swagger that had once defined him was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like desperation. His eyes traveled over Emma's transformed figure with a mixture of regret and hunger that she found both satisfying and slightly pathetic. Emma, you look incredible, Jake said, his voice thick with emotion. I mean, I know we're here to talk business, but I have to say you look absolutely incredible. Thank you, Emma replied evenly. I feel incredible. Success has been very good to me. She gestured toward the crowd of successful professionals mingling around the rooftop bar. As you can see, Rodriguez Financial Strategies has been well received by the business community. We're booked solid through the next quarter. But Sarah mentioned you were interested in our small business expansion services. Jake's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Emma, before we talk business, I need to tell you something. I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go. I was stupid, shallow, and I took the best thing that ever happened to me for granted. Emma waited for the familiar flutter of validation, the surge of satisfaction she had imagined feeling when Jake finally realized what he had lost. Instead, she felt only a mild curiosity about how this conversation would unfold. His remorse, which would have meant everything to her a year ago, now felt irrelevant to her life. Jake, Emma said gently, I appreciate the apology, and I'm glad you've gained some perspective on our relationship, but I'm here tonight to celebrate my business launch, not to relitigate our personal history. If you're serious about hiring Rodriguez Financial Strategies, we can schedule a proper consultation. If you're here to discuss our relationship, then you've made a mistake. Jake's face crumpled slightly. Emma, please, I know I don't deserve another chance, but I've changed. I've learned from my mistakes. I know how to treat you now, how to love you the way you deserve to be loved. Emma looked at Jake, really looked at him, and for the first time since their breakup, she saw him clearly, not as the man who had broken her heart, not as the validation she had once craved, but as a deeply insecure person who defined his worth through external approval and was now desperate to reclaim something he had discarded when it no longer served his image. Jake, Emma said, with genuine compassion, the woman you fell in love with doesn't exist anymore. That Emma needed your approval, your attention, your validation to feel worthy. This Emma knows her own value. The Emma you're nostalgic for would have been grateful for your renewed interest, but I'm not her anymore. As the evening continued around them, Emma realized that this moment, this precise instant of choosing her own path over the comfort of a familiar past, was the final piece of her transformation. She was no longer the woman who had defined herself through other people's desire for her. She had become someone worth desiring, and more importantly, someone who no longer needed that desire to validate her existence. The launch party continued late into the evening, but Emma's conversation with Jake had lasted only minutes. By the time the last guest departed, Rodriguez Financial Strategies had secured 3 new major clients and received inquiries from a dozen more. Emma's future had never looked brighter, and for the first time in her adult life it was a future built entirely on her own terms.